So this is a video analysis of Ben Lucas's cleans. So I'm assuming this is either an intentional power clean or an unintentional power clean. So if it's an unintentional power clean, it will just be a case of either basically going heavier to force Ben to have to drop under the bar more quickly. However, as is the case with most non-Olympic lifters, and as I know is the case with Ben, Ben will be pretty strong from the floor because of a history of strength training and picking up heavy things from the floor. Whereas in terms of, as far as I know, his training program, getting under the bar quickly will have probably made up a much relatively lesser component of his training. So if we just play it through here. So setup position is pretty good. I'd probably like to see the Ben start a little bit further away from the bar, so you can see that his shins are touching the bar initially. Now, if we were talking about deadlift performance, then this would be, for me, absolutely spot on. But I'd say just about a thumb's grip, about a thumb's width away from the bar is fine, because otherwise you're going to get friction as the bar obviously comes up the legs, which when you're trying to move the bar quickly, every little helps. You'll also see there, if we just go back a few frames, so ideally the bar should come up and slightly back towards us, whereas obviously because the bar starts in contact with Ben's shins, it can't come back at the same time. So there you'll see that fractionally the hips rise fractionally before the bar's even moved off the floor. So what we should look for in the clean is that ideally, so again I would probably start with Ben's hips ever so slightly higher, which would create that little gap between the bar. But anyway, so if we have Ben's back position here in his set position, ideally at the end of the first pull, this back position should end up where the second green line is, so that the back position stayed parallel. Again, because the hips move fractionally first, you can see, even though Ben does a nice job of staying over the bar, that back angle has definitely changed. Also, if we look carefully at the knees, the bar can't make its way around Ben's knees because it's literally already touching them. So if I just get rid of these lines and play that through. So again, that's a pretty decent power position. You can see that Ben's starting to rise up onto his... he's starting to rise up onto the ball of his feet early. At this point, Ben's heels should probably be, or ideally should be, still be down, so there's still, the jumping motion is still to happen. You'll also notice that Ben's elbows are starting to bend. A phrase that I heard from the first weightlifting coach, or the first strength and conditioning coach that introduced me to weightlifting, was that when the elbows bend, the power ends. So what that's indicative of is typically trying to prematurely pull on the bar. So think less about the arms pulling the bar and more about knocking beer cans off of the shoulders with a powerful shrug. So if I just clear these and play it through. So there's some lovely triple extension. You can see that Ben is right up onto his toes here, which again is probably a byproduct of one, the barbell being relatively light in comparison to his strength capabilities, and two, because Ben was already jumping slightly earlier than what should have been. So if we just clear those and play that through. Again, not a bad catch position, but you can also see that Ben's hips relative to his knees, because he's caught in a power clean, there's more knee moving forward than there is, for example, hips dropping back to receive the bar. Okay, we'll just look at another rep here. So again, because the bar is starting touching the shins, again, ideally I'd like Ben's hips to be a smidge lower to create a gap between himself and the bar, but only a slight one. We'll just play this through again. We're going to look at the relationship of the back angle with the first pull. Again, you can see, if I hopefully can slow that back down, you can see that the first thing to move is Ben's hips going up again. So there, the hips come up because there is nowhere for the bar to get pulled back. The only way Ben can create that space is by lifting his hips up, which, as you can see if you watch the shins touching the bar here, the only way that gap can be created is Ben pushing his hips up and his knees start to come back. Again, does a good job of staying over the bar. Now here is where Ben should be transitioning around the knee. Instead, you can see that Ben just basically pulls the bar straight up. In other videos of Ben's lifting technique, I've seen what some coaches refer to as a double knee bend, where the knees come back under the bar. Again, that's still a pretty good power position from which to jump from. Ben's heels are just, if we take that back a bit, so heels are down, heels start to come off. Again, I would still probably like to see a more vertical torso here as the heels start to come up. So one thing I would potentially be looking at is either cleans from a high hang position, or even something that first taught me how to get under the bar is something like a hip clean, where you literally start in your power position and you're just focusing on getting underneath the bar. It's not so much about how much weight you can use in this movement, but more getting used to that appropriate contact point, and then being able to effectively jump and smash those elbows through. Again, Ben's receiving the bar here, which again is probably more reflective of the fact that this weight is relatively light for his abilities to pull from the floor. And you can see that Ben obviously catches this in a power position. So key recommendations I would be looking at is I would have Ben practice getting in his set position with a gap in between his shins and the bar. I would be practicing breaking the bar off the floor and taking it to the top of the knee without this change in back angle that we see here, so the hips shooting up before the chest. So I'd be practicing that first pull to the bottom of the knee. I would be doing 2 of those. On the third rep, I would pause just below the knee, and then I would go into a hang clean from this below the knee position. So key things: start with a little bit of space between the shin and the bar. Practice the first pull so that the back angle can stay the same throughout the first pull, and then that transition around the knee, so doing a hang cleans from below the knee. But this first pull will fix a lot of things and will also help the lift feel a lot smoother.